The top floor of the Elara Hotel glowed under a warm haze of dim lighting, as if the air itself had been filtered through velvet. Crystal chandeliers sent fractured light across the high-arched ceiling, and beyond the windows, the city shimmered like shattered glass. Soft jazz threaded its way through clusters of well-dressed guests, their low murmurs tailored to maintain a sense of privacy. Elise Rowan hovered at the threshold of the private lounge, heels sinking into plush gray carpet, one hand clutching an empty tray. She drew in a slow breath before stepping in, even as every part of her body warned she didn't belong here. The perfume in the air was dizzying, almost too luxurious to breathe. The black dress her sister Claire had forced her to borrow clung too tightly, too smoothly, too far from anything Elise would ever choose for herself. The heels pinched like guilt. She wasn't here to shine. She was supposed to be downstairs, behind the coat check, but Claire had twisted her ankle that morning and pleaded, just for one night, serve the drinks, say nothing, don't draw attention. That hadn't worked out. He stood alone by the glass wall, tall, composed, dressed in a charcoal suit with silver cufflinks that caught the light. The drink in his hand didn't move, but his eyes did. They were fixed on Elise. She tried to look away, but he was already walking. Each of his steps was deliberate, unhurried, like distance bent around him instead of the other way around. When he stopped in front of her, he didn't ask for a drink. He didn't greet her. He simply said, "You're early." Elise blinked. "I'm sorry?" His voice was smooth, level. "I don't usually request new ones, but your file said you're discreet." "I think you've got the wrong person." He reached into his jacket, pulled out a sleek black card with a gold crest embossed in the center and handed it to her. Penthouse, 30 minutes. Then he turned and walked away. As if he'd already closed the deal, Elise stood frozen, heart pounding. She looked at the card, then at his retreating figure. What the hell just happened? She spun around, ready to chase after him. But before she could move, two guards approached and gently gestured toward a velvet-lined corridor. "This way, miss." Her voice caught. She said nothing. Just before the exit, a woman in a tailored blazer stopped her. "You're Elise Rowan, right?" "Yes." "Mr. Julian Hart said to expect you at Hartwell Tower, 9 a.m. sharp. He's waiting for his new personal assistant." Elise stood still, reeling. What kind of man mistakes a stranger and turns that mistake into a job? The morning came, wrapped in a thin veil of mist, turning the city into something seen through frosted glass. Elise Rowan stood before Hartwell Tower, a sleek monolith of glass and steel slicing into the gray sky, cold and impersonal, built to remind people that not everything in this city was accessible. In one hand she held a warm coffee, in the other a thick envelope delivered the night before. Inside, a temporary ID badge, no instructions, no note. She hadn't slept. The images from the rooftop lounge replayed on a loop. Julian Hart, calm and still as if reading her like a file. Elise didn't know what this was, but she knew she couldn't afford to ignore it, not when every other option was drying up. At exactly 9 o'clock IEM, she stepped inside. "Elise Rowan," she told the receptionist. The woman gave a nod, as if her arrival was expected. "Mr. Hart is waiting. Private elevator. To your right." The glass elevator lifted her skyward, past the ordinary, the familiar, the safe. The higher she went, the more everything below felt irrelevant. When the doors slid open, she stepped into a hallway of silence. Carpeted floors, golden light that didn't feel warm. She walked toward the last door. Julian stood by the window, back turned, phone in hand. When she entered, he ended the call and turned to her. There was no surprise in his eyes. "You came." Elise raised the coffee like a shield. "I wasn't sure I should." "Most wouldn't," he replied. "That's what I needed to know." He gestured toward the small conference table. She didn't move. "You think I'm someone I'm not." "I used to," he said. "Now, I don't." He handed her a folder. Standard contract, personal assistant, my calendar, internal communication, some off-hour obligations, competitive pay, unpredictable schedule, total discretion. She opened it. The number on the first page took her breath away. More than she'd made in 5 years doing 3 jobs. Still, she looked up. Why me? Julian didn't flinch. Because in this building, everyone is either trying to impress me or avoid me. You don't care about either. Elise couldn't remember the exact moment she said yes. After that, everything felt like stepping into a current too strong to swim against. The contract was signed. Her access badge was issued that same afternoon. A small office, directly adjacent to Julian Hart's, had already been prepared. From the moment she stepped inside, Elise knew she had entered a different world. Her first official day began with 7 emails, 3 meetings, and a schedule timed down to the minute. There was no handover from a previous assistant, no orientation. No one told her what to do. There was only the work, silent and relentless. Julien never raised his voice. He never repeated himself. If Elise missed something, he would simply move on and do it himself. Being bypassed like that was its own kind of reprimand, quiet but sharp. The rest of the office staff watched her. No one welcomed her. Elise quickly became the quiet figure trailing behind Julian, tablet in hand, eyes on the clock, lips pressed shut. But slowly, she started to learn his unspoken language. A slight pause in his step meant there was an error in the brief. A flick of the pen meant she should end the call. A barely there frown meant dissatisfaction, one no one else seemed to notice. She memorized them all. No one taught her. What unsettled her most was this: Julian never wasted a word. No small talk, no praise, no casual questions. He simply watched, remembered, instructed, and moved forward. Once, when she handed him a press release draft, he read silently until paragraph 3. Then he said, "Rewrite it." That reads like desperation trying to pass as confidence. She rewrote it. He nodded once. That was it. Each night, Elise returned to her small apartment, where Mia, her younger sister, would be waiting with leftover dinner and eyes that didn't need to ask if she was okay. "You quit yet?" Mia would ask. Elise would shrug, "Not yet." Because Julian Hart was everything Elise had never encountered. Cold, controlled, unreadable. But he was the only person she ever wanted to understand. That morning started like any other. Tightly packed meetings, stacks of documents on Elise's desk, and Julian Hart as punctual and unreadable as ever. What Elise didn't expect was to become part of a gala she had no intention of attending. "You're coming with me tonight," Julian said, stepping into her office without looking up from a folder. Elise blinked. "Sorry? I thought events like that were handled by the PR team. My last assistant coordinated them personally. You'll do it tonight." He was already turning away before she could argue. She stood, swallowed the refusal that had reached her throat, and followed. That evening, Elise wore the plainest black dress she owned. Hair pulled back, heels low, makeup subtle. She didn't want to stand out, and she didn't. All night, she walked beside Julian, whispering reminders, tracking guest arrivals, signaling the logistics crew. Everything was smooth, until she arrived. Evelyn Vale, PR queen, the only woman ever seen with Julian for more than 2 months, and his ex-fiancé. She approached with a champagne flute like it was a blade. Smile soft as silk and twice as dangerous. "You must be the new assistant," Evelyn said. Her voice was honeyed velvet, but her eyes were razors. Elise nodded. "I am." "Interesting. You've got that disposable look, like you won't last the month," and tried to understand what her friend was feeling. But she couldn't shake the denial. Elise didn't flinch. Evelyn's smile froze for a single breath. Then she leaned in closer. "Be careful, sweetheart. He doesn't keep people. He keeps silence. You'll see." Before Elise could respond, Julian appeared beside them. His gaze flicked between the two women, expression unreadable. Evelyn gave a saccharine smile and walked away, not saying another word. Julian turned to Elise, voice quiet, even. "You handled that well." The car ride home from the gala was quiet. Elise sat with her hands folded in her lap, eyes fixed on the blur of city lights streaking past the window. Beside her, Julian remained absorbed in his phone, his posture composed, unreadable. When the car rolled to a stop in front of her building, he spoke without looking at her. "She was testing you." Elise turned to him, voice even. "That was a test?" He didn't answer. The door clicked open. She stepped out, heart oddly steady. Not angry, not hurt, just quiet. The next morning, she arrived at the office on time, just like every day. Checked the calendar, sent confirmations, reviewed memos. Julian said nothing. No one else did either. Till 11:07. Her phone buzzed. A message from Mia. "What's happening? Your name is everywhere." Elise blinked. Then another text. "Check the news." She did. And everything shifted. A leading gossip site had published a headline in bold red. CEO Julian Hart accused of hiring assistants from escort services. Below it, a set of photos. One from the gala, her standing beside him. Another, blurry but unmistakable, from the rooftop lounge weeks ago. That exact moment, Julian handing her the black penthouse keycard. No names. But the implication was clear. The office felt quieter than usual. Not out of respect, out of scrutiny. The stares weren't subtle anymore. They followed her, measured her, judged. At the copy room, someone didn't bother whispering. Not surprising. By late afternoon, a slim folder marked HR review appeared on her desk. No sender. No explanation. But it didn't need one. At 5 p.m., Julian summoned her. He stood by the window, back turned. "You saw the article." "I did," Elise replied. "So did everyone else." "It isn't true." "It doesn't matter, does it?" He turned. Face unreadable. Then, slowly, "Is there anything I don't know?" Her breath caught. "Are you asking me if I actually did that?" Silence. She laughed, dry and sharp. "You gave me that card. You made the mistake. And now you're questioning me?" He said nothing. Elise nodded, voice calm and final. "If you still have to ask, then I was wrong to believe you." Then she left. And for the first time, she didn't look back. Elise left the city on a rainy evening, packing a few clothes, her old laptop, and her younger sister Mia. No one knew where she went. No one received a message. She didn't explain. She didn't say goodbye. She just disappeared. Not out of anger, but out of the quiet ache of needing to escape a place that promised change, but delivered disappointment. Julian didn't text, didn't call, didn't try to stop her. The room next to his office, where Elise once sat, still held an empty coffee cup, a few handwritten notes, and a silver hair clip someone had left behind in a hurry. No one touched it, no one cleaned up. And Julian, the man who never allowed empty spaces to remain for long, left it just as it was. As if by preserving everything, the one who left might find a reason to return. He still arrived on time, still handled everything as usual, but that precision had lost its edge. It had become a hollow repetition. A week passed, as if everything within him was running on habit, not conviction. And then, on the 7th day, the truth surfaced. Internal security traced the leak of the altered photos that had been released online. It wasn't a hacker. It wasn't a third party. It was Evelyn Vale. She had used her old PR account to send the images to a tabloid. Her motive wasn't money. It was envy. She couldn't bear the fact that Elise, a complete unknown, had managed to stay in a place where she had once been replaced. He simply gave the order to terminate every remaining contract tied to Evelyn, all within a day, silent but absolute. And yet, the one thing he truly wanted to get back never returned. Elise was gone. And for the first time in his life, Julian understood Power cannot salvage what silence has already lost. 10 days had passed since Elise disappeared. Julian didn't ask anyone, and he didn't tell anyone. But on the 11th day, he left the office on his own, for the first time without leaving a schedule behind. He wasn't going for business. He was going because something inside him had finally admitted silence was no longer a way to keep. It was a way to lose. The small house was over an hour's drive from the city, an address Mia had accidentally left in the internal scholarship system that Elise had once used to register her sister. No one knew how long Julian had kept that information. When Elise opened the door, she looked at him in silence for a few seconds. No surprise, no joy, no sadness, just the quiet of someone who had learned not to expect anything anymore. Julian gave no explanation. He simply said, "I need to talk." She let him in, the way someone opens the door to let the rain pass through the porch. Not welcomed, not turned away. "I found out who was behind it," Julian began. "It was Evelyn." "Not surprised," Elise answered, her voice steady. "I've handled it." "And you came here for what? Redemption?" "No," he replied slowly. "To admit I was wrong." Elise turned to look at him, a long, steady gaze. "Self, what do you want?" Julian took a deep breath. "I don't want you to come back in any role. I just want to know if there's still a chance for me to understand you, not as a boss, but as someone who hurt you." They sat across from each other in the small kitchen, afternoon light cutting through the thin curtain slanting across the wooden table. No one was performing now, no one was leading. Julian spoke first. "I want you to come back." Elise stayed silent for a few seconds. She didn't look surprised, but she didn't make it easy. "In what role?" "Not as an assistant," he answered instantly. "Not someone behind me, but someone who builds what we never had the chance to build properly." "Sounds like an invitation," she said, calm, "but I can't step back into that world as if nothing happened." "I don't expect you to," Julian said. "I don't want you back for the job. I want you back for the choice, made by both of us." Elise nodded slightly, fingers tracing the edge of her glass. "If I return, it won't be to manage your calendar or deliver coffee at 8:55, she met his gaze. "I won't stand behind you again." Julian nodded without hesitation. "I know, and I want you beside me." Silence returned, but this time it was mutual understanding. "What title?" Elise asked, half serious, half challenge. Julian gave a small smile. "Director of Special Strategy, full autonomy, no limits, except trust." Elise leaned back in her chair. "Sounds like a position that's never existed." "Exactly," Julian said. "Just like this relationship, we've never started it the right way." She didn't answer right away, but the next morning, her name was back in the building's security log. No one announced her return. No one needed to. Elise returned to Hartwell Tower on a quiet morning, unnoticed. No press, no announcements. But when Julian introduced her at the executive meeting with a new business card, Director of Special Strategy, the looks in the room had changed. She no longer stood behind. She sat beside. Julian didn't just assign. He asked for her opinion. She no longer had to prove anything. Her presence was enough. They never spoke of love, not once. But the way Julian quietly paused outside her office each morning, the way Elise always left an empty seat beside her in every meeting, were like whispered sentences that needed no words. On the night of the major press conference, Elise coordinated everything. Headset on, clipboard in hand, her eyes moved across every detail backstage like someone who knew the battlefield by heart. Julian stood below the stage, his gaze following her through the crowd. He didn't step forward, didn't interfere. He just waited. When the event ended, Elise walked toward the back, her breath still catching the rhythm of urgency. Julian stood there, holding a small velvet box. She opened it. Inside was a simple, elegant necklace with a small silver star at its center. "You never needed my world to shine," Julian said quietly. "I saw it the first night. You didn't even know you were lit from within." No promises were made. Just this. When Elise reached for the gift, Julian took her hand. Soft, but steady. And so, they walked together. Not back to what used to be, but towards something earned, something chosen, quiet enough to trust, real enough to stay.